You ever have one of those weeks where you wake up thinking nothing could possibly surprise you anymore, and then the universe rolls up with a whole new brand of crazy? That was me, Jack. The day I found myself staring at two SUV-sized boulders smack dab in the middle of the only access lane into our neighborhood, Harmony Creek Estates. Picture this suburban paradise, birds chirping, kids on scooters, lemonade on porches, or at least that's how it looked in the glossy brochures. In reality, the only things chirping around here are the printers spitting out HOA violation notices. And if I sound a little, let's say, crispy telling this story, well, Harmony Creek can do that to a man. Especially when your HOA is ruled by a woman named Karen. Yes, that Karen, the final boss of Karens. Now, before I get lost in the weeds, let me just say our neighborhood isn't big. It's one of those tightly packed developments where the houses practically breathe on each other, and every blade of grass better stand at attention or risk a citation. Karen rides around in her golf cart. She calls it the Enforcer, like a queen patrolling her kingdom with a ruler in one hand and a ticket pad in the other. If your mailbox is beige instead of gray, don't even ask, that's $75. If your garden hose is coiled the wrong way, she'll invent a rule just for you. My buddy Dave, 3 houses down, he says it's like being pecked to death by a really well-groomed goose. Me, I think the goose is getting off easy. We've got all kinds of characters here. There's Uncle Vince, not really my uncle, just an older guy who wears Hawaiian shirts year-round and has a lawn full of plastic flamingos. Karen calls it an eyesore. He calls it performance art. Once, when she cited him for a flamingo at an unauthorized angle, he stuck a witch hat on it and a sign reading "Curses on Petty Tyrants." She was not amused, but the rest of us were. Then there's the Harmony Creek Beautification Project. Don't get me started. Everything has to be red petunias, not pink, not purple. The solar lights they installed so we could all walk safely at night are about as useful as glow-in-the-dark stickers in a blackout. I'm a volunteer firefighter, been doing it 15 years. Which means more than most I understand what happens when you mess with access routes and start putting obstacles where emergency vehicles need to go. Which brings us back to the boulders. See, Karen sent out this newsletter, thick card stock, full-color photos of herself smiling like she just discovered gravity. Announced a major community enhancement coming to Whispering Pines Lane. No details, just a date for the unveiling. Every time Karen gets mysterious, it's like watching a thundercloud roll and something's about to go sideways. Dave stocked up on aspirin. Uncle Vince said he was training his flamingos for a defensive perimeter, and me, well, I just had a bad feeling. That Friday, a flatbed truck rolled in big enough to move bulldozers. Stopped at the narrowest curve on Whispering Pines, which just so happens to be the only good way in for Engine 12, our main fire truck. With a hiss and a groan, they unloaded 2 boulders so big I swear they affected local gravity. I stood there slack-jawed. This wasn't just Karen going overboard, this was dangerous. The whole neighborhood came out to gawk. Karen, hard hat and clipboard, directed the landscapers like she was building the pyramids. Traffic calming art pieces, she announced. Rustic charm, enhanced pedestrian safety. Mr. Henderson, who's 90 if he's a day piped up. How's the garbage truck supposed to get through now, or an ambulance? Karen just waved her hand. They'll manage. The aesthetic benefit outweighs minor inconveniences. That's when I stepped in, trying to keep my voice level. Karen, Engine 12 can't get through that gap. This isn't safe. She smiled at me the way a cat looks at a trapped mouse. Perhaps your little red truck needs to learn some new maneuvers. This has been approved. Approved by her, of course. Right? Then Uncle Vince rolls up wheelbarrow full of flamingos in hard hats, says these are structural safety inspectors. Places them on the boulders while Karen sputters about improper flamingo attire. The only thing more surreal than the scene was how fast the fines started flying. Anyone who questioned her at the unveiling found violation notices taped to their doors the next morning. Mine was for public disputation of an approved beautification project. Dave got inciting skepticism. I filed a complaint with the fire marshal, copied the town council, and knew it would take forever to get any response, but I wasn't letting it drop. Meanwhile, the boulders started wreaking havoc. Delivery drivers left packages at the entrance. The garbage truck gave up and demanded residents haul bins down the block. Karen sent out a new letter full of anonymous testimonials about how much the neighborhood loved her sentinels of serenity. She threatened fines and legal action for disrespecting the rocks. The war was on, and the battle lines were drawn in passive-aggressive emails and absurdly specific violation notices. Here's the thing about people like Karen. They don't just make bad rules, they enforce them personally. Poor Mrs. Gable got fined for feeding squirrels. Timmy Henderson, 10 years old, had his basketball hoop confiscated for being aesthetic non-compliant. The whole place was bleeding Goodwill little paper cuts at a time. Then Mr. Abernathy, who got fined once for offensive wind chimes, had a heart scare. The ambulance was delayed, forced to park and run gear in on foot. He pulled through, but that 3-minute delay felt like forever. When someone pointed this out, Karen's response was, perhaps if he followed the HOA's Wellness Wednesday guidelines. The air went out of the crowd. Even her loyalists looked sick. That was the moment I knew this wasn't just about rules or even power. This was about basic decency. I'd like to say justice came quick, but this is suburbia. It came slow in committee meetings and petitions in the tiny ways people resist. But then digging through old invoices and HOA financials, Dave and I started to notice things shell companies paid for landscaping invoices going to P.O. boxes, and one in particular for boulder placement aesthetics paid straight to Karen's personal account. Uncle Vince found it in her recycling. That's when it clicked. She wasn't just obsessed with control, she was funneling HOA money into her own pocket. Cameras popped up on every lamppost watching anyone she suspected of dissent. We built a case careful, methodical, because we knew Karen would come after us with everything she had if we made a false step. But then one night the universe decided to call her bluff. I was on shift at the firehouse, dead quiet, when the tones dropped. Structure fire 112, Whispering Pines, right where the boulders were. We hit the road, sirens blaring, and when we reached the boulders, well, there was only one way through. Our captain keyed the radio, got permission, and we rammed those rocks out of the way. Karen, in a pink silk robe, curlers, and slippers, came flying out screaming about her community art. She was so busy yelling she didn't even notice her own house was on fire until the flames broke through the roof. She crumpled, crying not for her stuff, but for her 2 Pomeranians, Peaches and Prancer, trapped upstairs. That's the twist that got me. For the first time, I saw Karen not as the tyrant queen, but as a panicked dog mom, desperate begging. So, yeah, I went in. My partner and I braved the heat and the smoke, searching room after room until we found those 2 little dogs cowering under a table. We got them out, handed them to Karen, who collapsed on the curb, sobbing, clutching her dogs. The house was wrecked but not lost, and as dawn broke, she was still there, hugging Peaches and Prancer as the fire marshal took statements. Here's the kicker. Karen's own phone footage of us ramming the boulders became Exhibit A for obstruction of emergency services. She was hit with charges, the HOA insurance refused to pay for the fire truck damage, and the board called an emergency meeting. Karen lost her power, her perfect house was ruined, and the town finally moved the boulders for good. That shell company fraud we'd uncovered. Now the real investigators were interested. The new HOA board rewrote the rules, made sure access lanes stayed clear, and scrapped half of Karen's worst ideas. Uncle Vince threw a block party. Dave grilled burgers. Harmony Creek actually felt harmonious. A few months later, Karen came by. No suit, no glare, just jeans and tired eyes with Peaches and Prancer on leashes. She handed me an envelope, a donation for the volunteer department. We're selling the house. Moving on, she said, and that was it. Sometimes justice isn't a siren and a gavel. Sometimes it's the quiet that returns. When the last bully leaves, neighbors start talking again, and the only thing you hear at night is the faint jingle of wind chimes finally free to sing. So tell me, would you call that justice or just poetic karma in the world's most relentless HOA? Drop your take below, because honestly, I still wonder where the line really is.